How would you react if your partner of 9 years suddenly suggested opening up the relationship? Is it just a harmless request or something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Join me as I take you through this emotional story where secrets unravel and trust gets brutally tested. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. I'm a young man, male 32, and I have been dating my girlfriend, female 28, for close to 9 years now. We started dating in high school, and ever since, she hasn't had any other relationship, and she feels we should explore other options. I cannot understand what brought on that idea or why, but I am certain I will never do this. I see an open relationship as a poor excuse for an affair. Saying I'm loath cheating is an understatement. I can never stand it. I have seen what it does to couples, and I don't want that heartache. I come from a family that was ruined because of cheating. My parents have been in love for as long as I can remember, and just when we least expected it, there was an affair, and it ruined our home. Today, my mom and dad barely speak to each other. I was 14 when I started to notice the change in my home. Dad came home late, and my mom became withdrawn. This was strange to me for a child who grew up to loving parents, family dinner, gifts and all. I didn't understand why my dad always came home late now, while my mom said nothing. I guess things were going behind the back door. I was left out. Then my older and only sister started acting up too. I can never stand it. I have seen what it does to couples, and I don't want that heartache. I come from a family that was ruined because of cheating. My parents have been in love for as long as I can remember, and just when we least expected it, there was an affair, and it ruined our home. Today, my mom and dad barely speak to each other. I was 14 when I started to notice the change in my home. Dad came home late, and my mom became withdrawn. This was strange to me for a child who grew up to loving parents, family dinner, gifts and all. I didn't understand why my dad always came home late now, while my mom said nothing. I guess things were going behind the back door. I was left out. Then my older and only sister started acting up too. She insisted she was going to school in a faraway country. The shock came when nobody said anything or tried to stop her. The old family would have insisted she stay close to home. I went to my sister that night to ask what had happened. Then we heard the noise. Unlike mine, her room is on the same floor as my parents'. I live downstairs, and the building is soundproof. You could hardly hear what went on in the other room unless the door was opened. That night, the door was opened, and I listened despite what Mom keeps saying. Eavesdropping was wrong. I heard all the horrible details of my father cheating on my mom. The hurtful way she sounded made me run toward their room. My sister ran after me and pulled me back. She shook her head as she wordlessly warned me not to interfere. Once in the room, she told me to stay put. This is their war. We cannot do anything about it. My once loving family didn't quite recover from that episode. I still don't know the details, but I know what it did to our home. I vowed never to be that kind of man who ruined my family, and I would never condone a woman who cheats too. Meeting my girlfriend is a topic I never get tired of talking about. I was the school's favorite rugby star, and she was a transferred student. She came into our school looking hot and sweet. Everyone fell for her drip. One thing then about being transferred was all eyes were on you. Unfortunately, my girl didn't like the attention. She was the shy type. At least she was back in school. I remember the day she walked into the high school. I had just finished my game and was coming back with my team. There was a whole crowd cheering as we walked in. As the captain, I was in the front with 2 teammates carrying me on their shoulders. 2 held my legs as we danced and clapped excitedly. Everyone was cheering and clapping, everyone except for this girl who looked so lost amidst the crowd. I didn't see the look, actually. I was more entranced by her innocent beauty. She was a chestnut-haired girl back then, contrasting to the red-haired woman now. The breeze blew as we opened the door, blowing away her hair everywhere while she struggled calmly to fix it in place. No one paid attention, but I did. "Oh, that's Rochelle, the new girl," whispered one of my teammates as we walked past her. He had noticed how I remained fixated on her. "She's in our class, dude." Shaking my head, I nodded and turned towards the jocks. But though I turned away, the face was imprinted on my memory, and so was the name. I wanted to ask when she resumed and how I was meeting her. Knowing what the answer would be, I didn't bother to ask. I was mostly always practicing lately. This was rugby season, and I loved the game. Well, that and the issues we were having back at home. Mom was moody, and Dad was never home. The girl was what I had, and I spent most of my time there. So either the new girl had been introduced while I wasn't in class, or she hadn't. I wouldn't know. The next day, I walked into class expectantly. I was particularly looking for her. As I walked into class, I did a quick sweep of everywhere. She wasn't there. With deep regret, I went to my seat. So much for missing rehearsals today. The science teacher walked in then, and seeing me in class, joked about me gracing him with my presence. I smiled. He was teasing me. Whatever high mood got me into class today was fast dropping, and I didn't even know why. Halfway through class, the teacher suddenly stopped, and there was my girl. I smiled as she stopped in front of the class. She was apologizing for something, but I barely heard. All I noticed was that her hair was neatly packed today, and that she was as beautiful as I thought. The teacher waved her to sit, and I was waving that she take the seat beside me. Oh, the whole class chorused. I intentionally went blank on them, pretending not to know what they meant. The seat beside me was never taken. No one except my teammates was allowed there. It was like an unspoken rule. I think it was left out of respect for the team's captain, but I didn't ask for it. The specs of being a school favorite. People loved me. The love didn't end only when I was playing. It was on, right in the class, at the park, almost everywhere. My schoolmates fight over me. They fight for me. I've seen girls go gaga over whoever dared badmouth me, so generally I was the golden boy. And I think my family also solidified that. I'm from one of the prominent families in LA, and my family may have been involved in funding 1 or 2 school projects, so everyone knows my sister and me. My older sister. She graduated a couple of years back and had left the city. My parents were planning to return, but it was more of a publicity stunt than love. We didn't want to be a part of that, so my sister blatantly refused to come home. Most people didn't know this. The word on the street was that my mom had to visit her family in Texas and would be back. Only a few people knew what had happened, and by a few, I mean myself, my sister, mom, dad, and probably the lady he cheated with. That singular act made my dad lose the respect we had for him. As the new girl walked to my seat, I shook my head to throw my mind off that sour topic. She smiled and sat when I patted the seat beside me for her to sit. I nodded and waited until the class wasn't paying attention to us, but to the teacher before looking her over, and I kept stealing glances at her all throughout the day. We spoke a few times, just random talks, but I knew I wanted to find out more about this girl, who she was, where she was from, everything. Before the close of the school that day, I managed to talk her into getting a ride home with me. She obliged, saying that her mom would be picking her up, and she wasn't even staying along my route, but who cares? I don't mind the trip. Still, we talked out of class that day, holding hands amidst loud whistling and catcalls. People must have been cheering, not just me now, but the new girl. Though I didn't ask her out yet, I knew I liked her. Walking her out was me saying the other guy should back off. She is spectacular. We became friends since she had a permanent spot beside me. We also exchanged numbers, and we chatted back and forth, sending text messages now and then. Before long, we were an item. I didn't ask her out, but it was obvious what I wanted. I was biding my time. The rugby team and some other guys who might have been interested knew they stood no chance, so they backed off. That didn't stop my teammates from teasing me mercilessly, though. My friendship bloomed very quickly with the new girl. Ours was love at first sight. I liked her a lot. There were so many things we shared in common. That kind of hastened the relationship. We became inseparable, so much so that the school's gossip page picked on it. They gave us a nickname, and it stuck. Everyone seems to approve, everyone except my therapist. Due to what was happening back home, my dad insisted we all go for therapy. The man seems to think getting romantically involved with a girl might not be the best for me. I didn't know where he got his theory from, but I knew this wasn't me finding love aside from home. He made me promise not to make her my girlfriend yet, and enjoy the friendship we shared until I was certain I wanted to do this. To be sure I wasn't acting out, I did wait. I didn't tell Madison what I wanted in so many words. I left her to make her deductions. The silence hurt me more than it hurt her. As I delayed making my intentions known, my friends teased me. They wanted to know why they're so bold-capped and was slacking here. I kept my secret to myself since I could understand they also meant well. Before that, I was heartbroken by my girlfriend, which is a whole new story. The girl I was dating dumped me for the star player of our school's rival. She played me. I was a mess when that happened. I started dating my girlfriend, Chloe, because we were the school's darlings. I wouldn't call it dating anyway, since we were all just high school kids fooling around. Our relationship was more of a collaboration, if anything. We were the darlings of the school. I was the golden boy, the school's rugby captain and all. She was the school's head cheerleader, and she is hot. Everyone just assumed we were made for each other, and they pushed us to each other. Then Chloe was all over me too, and I had no choice. She liked me, I guess. As the school's golden girl, dating me would look great on a resume of social cliches, but she was as vague about what she wanted. We were together for over a year. Dating her was so much work because Chloe was a drama queen. She wanted me all over her as she was all over me. I had to go to her rehearsals as a supporting boyfriend, and I must fight when she was insulted for starting a fight in the first place. When she sneezed, I needed to be rushing forward with a tissue paper. That is what her ex-boyfriend did. Unfortunately, I couldn't do all of that. My training had me away most of the time, though it took me a while. Chloe eventually got it. I couldn't be that person for her, but she loved the attention our relationship gave her, so she accepted what she had. On the contrary, though, I wasn't in the loop. Whatever and whenever chance she had, I did those things. She made me run errands and do annoying things. I even had to fight people for her. I wasn't mean to people. I couldn't, but she was all of that herself. I just had to do the cleaning up without her knowing. People call me the sweet one in the relationship and wonder why I was with her. Outside, my ex could be all sorts of mean, but she never jokes about her man. I was her priority when she needed to make me that. Loving her was complicated. One minute we were good and laughing, the next we would be walking hurriedly away from each other. Then came the intruder. While practicing for one of my intensive games, I started to pull away from Chloe, but it wasn't intentional. We had this game with our school's #1 enemy and rival. Even our coaches were on edge. We had to put in more extra time practicing as we would die. It was either we win or go through another embarrassing fate at the hands of the rival team. Last year, they won us pants down, and we were the joke for weeks, even months. We didn't want that this year, so we worked overtime. Somehow, while all this was going on, Chloe became the center of things. As our cheerleader, she worked with her members on the best dance steps, so I assumed she had stuff to handle too. Unlike ours, though, their rehearsals came along well, and she was always around my practice to watch me play. At one of our rehearsals, we were suddenly told the coach from the other team had come to visit with his captain. Rehearsals stopped immediately as the two coaches, ours and the other one, started to exchange sly comments. The rival coach wanted us to stop rehearsing so much as we would never be good enough. He teased us ruthlessly, but we accepted, bounce this. He always does this. One thing to know is, we don't always lose to this school. 3 years back, we won them flat down, but that was it. They have always been the best in rugby, and winning against them that once was merely a coincidence. But it opened our eyes to two things. One is that the school wasn't unbeatable. Two, we really could do this. Tired as we fight, we haven't beaten them ever since, but here was another chance to try at it. While the coaches were in heated chat, I noticed the captain and Chloe were having their banter, but for some reason my ex was enjoying this. She was throwing shades at this guy and laughing. Chloe never did that unless she is excited. She couldn't be, not in that situation. That's what I thought. To my surprise, she was. I stormed to where the two were and pulled my girl away. The other captain smirked and left. That was how both Chloe and the captain met. Over time, she would ask me about him from me and how our rehearsal was going. Though she came from my practice, she was increasingly distracted and always wanted to talk about the rival team. I didn't read much meaning into it until the game started. Amidst the shades throwing, I guess Chloe and the rival school's captain found common ground. They kissed, and I didn't know about it until the gossip column aired it. I had lost my girl to the rival captain, my worst enemy. I took consolation in the fact that we won the game, but my pride was hurt and I sulked for days. Thankfully, my fans were there for me. Sly comments were being passed here and there. It was a difficult time for Chloe. Seeing her become the object of so much shame made me get over the hurt quickly. I also joined in the tease and finally I let it go. She wasn't worth it. That was 2 years ago and I was ready to move on. I think the school was ready for me too to be with someone. Only no one suspected it would be the new girl they barely knew. The gossip column again helped. The writer, whoever it was, urged me to make a move. It would be better for a new girl than anyone in school, it said. In a way, I guess people were cheering me on to date this new girl. I waited though, as my therapist instructed. I needed to be sure I was ready. Well, like it was in high school, some didn't like our friendship. Guys! But it wasn't just guys now. I also noticed that some girls were beginning to be mean to her. But Madison was smart. She immediately knew the reason for the new hostility. The once single, most eligible player is off the hook. That's what she said. I listened as she explained how, as a fan, she would have been disappointed too. It's like watching your crush announce his girl, she laughed. At the time, I didn't understand. What happens with a player having a woman? After all, they do have their lovers too. But I guess all these things happen. I would later understand this too because I not only became the new girl's boyfriend, I also became her cheerleader. Finally, my therapist gave me the go-ahead. I passed his test. Since I could proceed now, I decided to make a big deal about our relationship. I had to announce my relationship with her publicly. Right after one of my best games, I made the announcement. She had come, of course, to cheer me on and had no idea what I was thinking. I made sure she came there dressed for the occasion. I got her a lovely dress to wear to the games. It was a sporting outfit, and when she tried it out for me, it was her perfect fit. After the game, she ran out to hug me. I just grabbed the mic and shouted, "My girl," and I kissed her fully on the lips. She was flustered, and she liked it. After that, I whispered in her ears if she would be my girlfriend. Tearfully, she accepted. I gave my guys a thumbs up, which meant she accepted. The DJ lit up the whole arena with a romantic ambiance. For days, we were the talk of the town. Some openly congratulated us, and some were openly rude as well. I heard so many nasty comments. Some mean jokes were said about the new girl and how she had wiggled her way into the school's golden boy lap. It wasn't nice of my girl, but she carried her shoulders high. But the best was, we had more people on our side than against us. Somehow, though, I caused this. Announcing the relationship broke the hearts of my fans. To them, I was no longer available. Madison would later say that had she been my manager, she wouldn't have advised that I announce our relationship that way. But I was young and in love. Who cared what other people thought? One other thing is, Madison suffered in so many backlashes. The school's gossip column picked on why she transferred and dug into her background. It turns out she had to transfer not just because her mother changed jobs. As a matter of fact, the change of job was because of what had happened. It would appear that the new girl had stepped on bigger toes there. I didn't need to know what happened, but I could tell she was so hurt that the gossip column dug out her past. Rather than be angry, she didn't tell me any of this. I stood up for her defense. She eventually told me the actual story. It wasn't even what anyone thought. I wanted to correct the column and make them apologize to her, but she insisted it wasn't worth it, that it was stale gist. I said nothing. Behind her, though, I asked for help and got the writer's identity. I then made her post an apology for posting about my girl when she didn't have the facts. When the article came out, Madison suspected I had a hand in it. I shrugged and said nothing. If only that were all we faced in high school. I also remember that the column hinted that she might have been after my money. You see, she was from a humble background, unlike me, who came from a family of affluence. And it was to assume she was with me for the money. In reality, though, Madison refused to collect anything from me. The only time I gave her something she didn't return was her prom dress. In fact, getting her food was a tug of war. Madison and I became so in love, I was always longing to be with her. School prom came and went. Whatever I had done wrong when I announced our relationship paid off. We were crowned the best couple of the year. My announcement video was played as contributing to that. "See that babe?" I said, kissing her happily. It didn't matter if I did wrong or if I might have ruined something. After prom, we all left school to wait for our results. I had picked Stanford and wasn't sure what Madison had picked. I wanted to know, but I guess the fear of parting ways didn't look palatable for me. And I did tell her mine. She chose not to tell me hers. Perhaps she wanted me to ask. Well, I got my admission letter before hers, and I was in. I didn't know what to tell her. Going to Stanford meant I would be miles away from my girlfriend if she remained here. It was too much to handle. We had been together for 2 sweet years, and I wasn't ready to end it. For days, I couldn't work up the courage to tell her I got admitted. Whenever we were together, I avoided the topic. Finally, I needed to start getting ready to leave. It was pointless not talking about this. So I called her for a date, and I planned on telling her about leaving. As we ate, Madison knew something was up with me. "Why are you so fidgety?" "It's unlike you," she stated. I jumped right at that opportunity and told her I would be going to Stanford. "Oh, I knew that already." That was her calm response. I dropped my cutlery and stopped eating. She knew. How? She laughed and said, "We spoke about this, remember?" Then she narrated how I had told her about the school I had chosen. "I didn't want to say goodbye so soon, so I chose Stanford too," she said. It turned out that she had a surprise for me too. She brought out a letter and nudged me to read. When I picked it up to read, I saw that it was her acceptance letter. Stanford? I was shocked. She started to cry then. I didn't know what the tears were for. I held her to me. Maybe she was excited we would be together. I am too, just not this excited. We started planning to leave for Stanford. I got everything I needed in twos against her protest, and I made sure she had all she needed. I was opportune to get a cool space close to school while she was to stay in the hostel. With everything in place, we fixed the date to move to school. I needed to get some things from my sister, who was coming home the following weekend. My family was whole again. We weren't perfect yet, but it was worth celebrating, and my sister was coming too. She insisted I wait to get some materials from her, but I knew it was so she could see me before leaving for school. But waiting for her meant I would be a week late for resumption. That wasn't a problem. The only issue was Madison, who was traveling with me. At the time, we didn't know. We only felt we would be a week behind schedule. Unfortunately, when we got to school, Madison had no boarding room to stay in. It was all fine by me to have her move to my room. After all, I caused this. Her mother didn't like the suggestion, but we had no choice, having tried every other option. The only room available had 4 occupants already, and the last person had called to say she would be coming down the next day. That is how my girlfriend and I ended up living together all through college, and it was fun. We were a couple, and I loved that. All through school, we lived together because the apartment was spacious. We could throw parties whenever we wanted. We also had friends staying over. Sometimes her friends, and sometimes mine, spent the weekend. It was never an issue. Although now, I do remember once that my friend stayed over. I met Ethan in college. Like me, he was a rugby player and good-looking too. We hit it off immediately. We became good friends and were always together. He was in the same class as me. When he came over, it became a burden to our relationship. I quietly got him out. Madison and I had different schedules. Though we were both at Stanford, we weren't taking the same class. She was studying business administration while I studied family law. That meant we didn't have the class time and didn't move with the same friends. I don't think we changed in school. I feel like we grew, but growth didn't stop our relationship. It was true we had our ups and downs, but we obviously loved each other so much that we, through the 4 years in school. College was unlike high school. Nobody had your time, no teacher to monitor your back and forth, even though you were all well known. It was almost easy to get lost in the crowd. Fortunately, I wasn't deemed for that kind of life. My prestige from high school awaited me in college. The moment I resumed, I was the school's golden boy once again. But this time, it was different, Ed. It was like everyone knew you, yet no one cared what you did. And sure, nobody judged you for being with someone. I also realized that someone completely shielded could become an entirely different person. That was the only thing about Madison that hit me. She might not have been the golden girl in high school, but she was in college. Madison challenged the lecturer in one of the classes as she narrated. She had been paired with some others on a project. As a spokesperson, she was delegated to represent her peers in the school debate, and she floored it. However, a particular lecturer wasn't satisfied. He kept throwing questions at her, to which she had prompt answers. Ultimately, he dropped the case and declared her his best study. That got my girl her opening. She became his PA amongst others. He bombarded her with so much work. She didn't complain, but I could see she struggled to keep up. I not only became her cheerleader, but I also had to step up and work with her. Madison's new role as the class rep meant she had many friends. Most of her course mates always called her for information and whatevs. She was always on the phone. It wasn't a big deal for me, but those periods had us not at our best. We were barely speaking, though we lived together. I was either off to lecture, or she was. In the evenings when we were together, she would be on the phone half the time. Once I started noticing I was losing my girl to college, I sorted that out. I had to initiate date nights for evenings. Sometimes I slipped her phone back into the room so we wouldn't be interrupted. And to play fair, I do drop mine. She caught me once I was trying to keep her phone away. I had to complain while she had to go with me without her phone. She was a bit disappointed that I had been doing this without speaking to her about it. I sat her down and asked her how she would feel if I said her studies were stealing her away from me. Madison said nothing for a long time. She stared at me as she gave it a thought. My girlfriend is a sweet lady. She could be as daunting and as loving as she could. Still looking at me, her brow furrowed into a tight frown suddenly lightened. The next instant, she had a sad smile and was smiling at me. Then she pulled me in for a hug, apologizing sadly. I'm so sorry, and I didn't know this. I didn't mind that she was hugging me from behind. Bending, I lifted her on my back and turned her until she was in front of me, still clinging to me. We never had the chance to go for a date night that evening. We made love passionately. It had been a while since we had that. For some time, Madison was the sweetest as she ensured schoolwork didn't affect our relationship. Sometimes I caught her deliberately ignoring calls when with me. I had to let her know I didn't mind. I was not just her man, but her cheerleader. She had been there for me in school too. The least I could do was watch how it felt to be the cheerleader and not the superstar. And in all sincerity, I meant that. Couples who lived together would testify that relationships could be a hassle. Madison and I had ours too. It wasn't all rosy for us. We had moments that stuck in memory, and we had times when we didn't know how we could get past the situation we were in. One such incident that almost ended our relationship happened in our third year in school. I had come home from class one day terribly exhausted. The door was locked, but that wasn't a big deal. We both had our key. Sliding the key in, I opened the door. I was met by a strange guy, half naked and looking so comfortable in our home. Who's that? Madison asked, coming from the inner room. I looked from the guy to her, wondering who the hell he was. Madison pulled me into the room to explain that the guy was her course mate. He had nowhere to stay, and she had asked that he stay with us while he sorted his accommodation issue out. He was a transfer student, and he had nowhere to go. Okay, let me point out that I understand that as a transfer student once or twice, it is understandable that she would feel the need to help out. Secondly, she was the course rep and might have felt this was a duty she could provide, especially since she had the means to that end. Lastly, this wasn't a big deal. I mean, we had people stay with us all the time. Her friends have stayed with us, and so have mine. However, this particular one didn't present itself right to me. He was a guy for Pete's sake, not the usual friend. Plus, he had this air around him that I didn't like. I went to the living room again to be sure I got this right. Yes, the man definitely had an attitude for someone who didn't own the house. He looked too comfortable. I don't like this, I told my girlfriend. You didn't ask me about it first. And even as I gave excuses, I knew that wasn't it. I was just not okay with a guy in our home. Of course, Madison was flustered. She had assumed I would be fine with it. I usually was. She tried to plead with me to understand and let the guy stay for some days. I wasn't having that. I wanted him dressed and out of the apartment immediately. When the pleading fell on deaf ears, my girlfriend became upset. She insisted I was that way because it was my place and she didn't have a say. That shut me up. I don't particularly appreciate when she pulled the "your privilege" card on me. It makes me look untouchable and above her. I sat down then and nodded that he could stay. Only for some days, I told her. She was happy and she hugged me with so much relief. Some days later, she would ask why I opposed the guy staying with us so much. To this, I responded that he looked too relaxed for someone stranded. By the way, he's Logan, she said, telling me the guy's name. For some reason, I couldn't explain. I instantly hated Logan. Even his name was a piss-off. With Logan around, Madison didn't have my time. She was too busy helping him out with all his stuff or that. He had backlogs, and she was helping him with that. I watched them both as they worked sometimes while I pretended to be busy on the laptop. My girlfriend didn't even notice how bored I had become, but I knew he would leave soon, so I endured the torture of watching them together. I also noticed that Madison seemed to laugh more at his jokes and got carried away when with him. Even when with me, she sometimes mentioned his name unintentionally. One afternoon I came home earlier. It wasn't so early though. Madison didn't remember my schedule anymore. I came home to people running around. Scared, I rushed into the room. "What's going on in here?" I asked as I saw both of them rolling off the bed onto the floor. He was tickling my girlfriend, and she was running around trying to stop him. The two looked at me guiltily and stopped. Logan excused himself, and I turned to my girlfriend. "What the heck?" I sighed. I wanted to know the stupid game they were playing that got them into the bedroom. She didn't see it as a big deal. She merely shrugged, explained that they were doing their assignment, and got carried away. I shut my mind so I wouldn't overthink it and get carried away. But then I wondered how carried away they would have been if I had not come in that early. I must say it was a disturbing thought. It didn't end there. Sometimes I would come home and meet them playing peekaboo with my girlfriend giggling excitedly. The first time I met them on that, the initial shock was patted down when she pulled me to join in the game. Madison was happy like some school kid. I'm not sure I had seen her that happy before. Well, the second time they played this silly game, I was so tired I went into the bedroom. My girlfriend didn't even notice this. She went on with her game. Then and there, I knew Logan had to go. I instantly called in favors and had his accommodation issues sorted out. That ended the relationship, I hoped, but they were taking the same classes, so I knew they would meet in school. The thought pushed me away from Madison for some time. Somehow, she must have also realized that I played a role in his moving out of the house. She sulked for days because she was bored. I didn't bother trying to cheer her up. I was equally pissed too. Once I went to her department, I had finished class early, and I decided to check up on her. This wasn't the first time. I called her phone, but she wasn't picking up, so I just went to her department. I didn't find her immediately. When I did, guess who she was with? Logan, yes, I was furious. Holding her hand, I pulled her away and drove us home. We had a nasty argument that day. I asked her square and fair if she liked Logan more and wanted to be with him. She stared at me in shock. "How could you even say that?" She yelled and burst into tears. I somehow felt guilty, thinking I had it all wrong. But they were too close for comfort, even if she wasn't seeing the guy. We argued back and forth until I knew she got the picture that she was becoming too close to this guy, and I was not too fond of it. We didn't speak to each other for days. I wasn't sure if she would yield or not. I would, and I didn't even know if we could find common ground here. Finally, though, we moved past it. She apologized for making me feel like I had to compete with another man for her attention. I also apologized for making out what was a friendship into something more. And yes, we got past that episode. Oh dear. Seeing as you said that you had a history with cheating and you saw what it did to couples and families, OP, I'm shocked that you were willing to work it out and move past it. All signs point to the fact that she wasn't just close with him. She was indeed cheating on you and seeing him and whatever else. On your own bed, you had a long history with her, and it's hard to imagine that the people we love are capable of doing something like infidelity. But believe it or not, they are capable of it, and you saw what you saw. She knew exactly what she was doing. You just don't let your male friends hold your hands and tickle you. That's going way too far, and it's far too intimate for a male friend to do. What do you think? What's crossing the line? Part B, after school, we went back home. I had a CEO seat already waiting for me, although for some time I would be undergoing training for my sister. She had been managing the family business while I was in school. I was to come in as the business lawyer and CEO while she handled the other businesses. I didn't like the arrangement, but I had no choice. I was also starting my private law firm, and I needed all the help I could get. I wanted Madison to work with me, or for me, as she said. She turned me down, claiming she needed some air. I knew what she meant. We had lived together for more than 4 years. She would want some air, truly, but what she wanted was far deeper, and I didn't get it in time. I guess that was when I should have been paying attention. She had categorically said she needed some space away from me. I became so comfortable in my relationship with Madison that I lost track of time. Today makes it 9 years that we've been together. Yet, she says she's not ready to get married to me. Back in school, I had once asked her to marry me. Sure, she replied with little or no excitement. So I asked what was going on in her thick head. She then said we were too young to be bonded for life. Think of all the beautiful people we haven't met yet. People we'd want to have something deep with. I shook my head at the thought. I had a perfect girlfriend whom I loved so much. Why do I need any more beautiful people? I told her this quite frankly, and she laughed. Since she turned down the offer to work for me, which quite frankly I understand, I tried to get a good job with some well-to-do company with whom I had a close relationship. When I discussed it with her, she turned that down too. Then she went on to explain that she had lived off of me in college and wanted to do things independently. She was also trying to get some money and pay me back. For someone whom I had dated for years, I was surprised she thought I took her for charity. Though I insisted she doesn't repay, I knew she was adamantly chasing that, and I was preparing for the day she would come with such despicable money. Since our arrival from Stanford, it seems something has changed in our relationship. I had proposed around the time we were leaving school, and the casual way she dismissed me hurt. I mean, who dates someone for that long and insists she isn't ready to get married? I'm always grateful, though, that the proposal had been a private one. It was deliberately planned, and I had intentionally left out friends. The plan was to announce our engagement after the proposal. Who knew there would be no announcement coming soon? I was hurt that she turned me down, really. But it wasn't like I couldn't let it slide. She had, after all, not rejected me. She only said we both needed some real-life lessons and to have a clear-cut path before settling down. She even took the ring from me as a sign that she loved me, only she doesn't wear it. When we moved back to LA, I assumed the distance had something to do with the proposal that had gone awry. But it was more. First, there was the proposal, then she mentioned repaying me for living with me at Stanford. And she had said we had to have a clear path, and there was the job offer denied too. Yes, it was true, we were pulling apart. I didn't notice this. When I got home, I had a CEO position to fill and was always so busy. Since we no longer lived together, seeing my girl was a hassle. She was always busy too, searching for a job and doing one thing or the other. Personally, I wanted Madison to live with me. As a CEO now, I have my quarters. I didn't see the need to live with my parents. They were good now. My sister lives there, although she has her apartment too. She goes back and forth, which is what I intended to do too. The apartment is huge, yet I lived alone with the bits of help, just 3 of them. I explained to Madison that she could move in, but she blatantly refused, so I let her be. The first shock came when she announced that she had finally gotten a job. That was 6 months ago. I was genuinely happy for her and wanted to come see her at her workplace. At first, she didn't want me to leave my hot CEO seat, as she said, just to see her. Then she mentioned that the place wasn't as nice as my well-furnished and polished company. But hey, who cares? I insisted I was going to visit, and I was there. She was one of the 3 staff of the company. I had to swallow my arguments, and she didn't want to work with me. Plus, her enthusiasm about the job was disturbing. I greeted the other staff casually and was on my way out when the boss came. And guess who my girlfriend now works for? It was Logan. Same old Logan. I went back to my workplace furiously. The fact that she had said nothing about this made me angry. What was she thinking? That I wouldn't see the boss when I came? It made me wonder how long she would have said nothing to me had I not found things out myself. Knowing I was angry, Madison came to my place that evening. It was one of our serious fights. I could never forget how angry I was with her. On her path, she tried to make her statement. Her excuse was that she knew I would flip if I knew who the boss was. Of course I would. This was a guy who almost took my girl away from me. What was she thinking? You cannot work for him, I insisted. This cannot work for me. Madison equally put her foot down and insisted she wasn't quitting. I don't understand how she wanted to work for her colleague back in school, but not me. We fought, and it was a nasty fight. I wanted her to leave the workplace that didn't even look great. She, on the other hand, said I was becoming too controlling. It wasn't good. We didn't talk for a long time, but I finally yielded this time. I told myself I didn't need to be so insecure about our friendship that may or may not result in what I thought it was. Not that she was going to quit her job anyway. Then I asked around too. I could have run down that business. It It was only a matter of placing a call, but I chose to respect her and what we shared. If she said nothing was going on, then it is my responsibility to trust her and hope that she will make sure nothing goes wrong. I guess I was wrong. I could only trust myself in what I do. I shouldn't place my trust in someone else. We are different, and we change, and so does feelings. I could trust my feelings. Can I trust hers? Madison started working and she was enjoying it. While I was honestly so busy, I checked on her. We chatted back and forth online, and we met for some good dinner and some sightseeing. For some time, all was perfect until she became too engrossed with work. At some point, I became unimportant to her. She rescheduled our meetings without thinking of the planning I put in. She stopped seeing me for the man who was in love with her. I became the one whose meeting could be rescheduled. Whenever we picked a date, I had to check in with her constantly to be sure she didn't forget or had canceled for some other plans. I didn't want to complain. Well, maybe at first I didn't. But when it was becoming too much, I started to drop subtle hints, hoping she would read in between the lines. Nothing changed. Things rather became bad. We were both in the same city, but I hardly saw my girlfriend. The excuse was always that she had so much work to do and that she was very tired. If I wanted to visit, said she would not be home, or if she were, she would be too tired to entertain any visitors. That she made me into a visitor never ceases to amaze me. We say occasionally. It went from thrice weekly to twice in 2 weeks, and then it became once a month. What was worse was her complacency. It bothered me that she didn't see this as a big deal. And when I went to check on her at work and saw that she was indeed stressed, I felt I needed to do something to save her from herself. One evening, I decided to propose again, get married, and have her move with me. I thought that would at least make her mine, and I could stop her from working, or we could work up some better arrangement. I put everything into this date. I even started sending subtle hints so she could be prepared. Like I did for prom, I sent her a sequin dress. I love how she dazzles in those. Madison called to say she loved the dress and was looking forward to dinner with me. As she recalled this happened at prom too, she said nothing about it. The only thing she did was she took a picture of herself wearing the dress and sent it to me. The image stayed in my memory. Somewhere in my mind, I felt she could have just come to my apartment to dress up for me, but I had to stay satisfied with the picture she sent. I made sure my PA canceled all my appointments for that day. I also called my girlfriend to be sure she had me in her plans still. She laughed at me for being so nervous and said she would be there. So I got 2 of my friends and we went to the venue to see what the decorator had done. I arranged to meet at the Barty Lounge, which had just opened in LA. Only the powerful and affluent in the state could get such a place at such a short notice. In fact, my girlfriend was impressed when I told her that that's where we would be dining. I loved what the decorator had done with the place. Since I told him I would propose, I paid for every extra topping that could make the day memorable. The spot we were using was beautifully decorated, and I loved it immediately. I was sure she would love it too. Flowers were used to forming a love shape around the love seats in the red carpet. Everything was so perfect. Something made me snap at the beautiful arrangement. I was going to send it to my girlfriend later. We went over to look over the menu. A special chef would be handling our meal. It was a 2-course since we would be dining in the evening. The chef brought out a sample of what we could have. With my friends, we deliberated on the appropriate meal. This was a woman's field, and the chef, thankfully, is a woman. She helped us decide on the best course. After I asked the chef how the ring should be served, I planned on having the ring out while we were dining. The chef and my friends suggested dessert would be the perfect time for that. We rehearsed that part, and then my friends and I went home to change. I wanted one of them around to capture the moment. They had already gotten a hidden spot across from us. Everything was set. So I got home, ran my bath, and set it in to enjoy the event about unfolding in my mind. As my mind drifted through the process we had seen at the lounge, I remembered the picture and sent it to my girl with the caption, "Cannot wait to have you here." Dropping my phone on the stool away from the tub, I dived into the water. I got a message immediately from Michelle, I suppose, but I was already in the water, so I didn't check it. After the message tone, there was another, and then another. Assuming she was thrilled, I smiled and continued bathing. Then my phone started to ring. I ignored it. Perhaps it wasn't Madison. It could be work calls. I see that as I noted to talk to my PA. I had informed her already to clear my schedule. The ringing persisted, but it didn't pick up until I was done. When I got out, I checked my phone and it was Madison. As I suspected, she dropped a message saying the image was beautiful, but there was another with a sad emoji. I didn't understand what was saddening about the image. I immediately clicked on the message. Before I could read, she called again. "Hey babe," I said, picking up the call happily. "I'm sure." I stopped talking when I heard the panic in her voice. "What's wrong?" I asked, and I listened as she filled my ears with the BS excuses. I flared up, ended the call, and called my friends. "It's canceled," I screamed into the phone. "No proposal is happening." I hung up the call and called the lounge to cancel too. I was so mad. Grabbing my keys, I drove to her house to know why she blew me off again. Madison was home, and so was another person. The car parked outside was an indication she had a visitor. Too angry, I barged into her apartment. There she was with her boss. They were bent over something on the table. "Is this what you called off our date for?" I asked furiously. Both of them jumped back in shock. "So, you would rather spend time with this man here than drag yourself to me?" I yelled. "It's work, baby," she pleaded. "You realize this same work has been taking first place lately?" I asked, eyeing Logan angrily. I should have known he had a hand in this. Did he suggest she cancel our date? What were they doing when I came in? Most importantly, why would Madison feel whatever work they were working on was more important than I am? Sometime in the middle of the heated argument, Logan left. I sat on the couch in utter frustration. My friends kept calling me, and I picked up and yelled that the proposal was off. "What?" Madison exclaimed. Angrily, I got up. "Yes, I was going to propose," I blurted out, "and now I have to cancel everything." That said, I grabbed my keys and left. I resumed work the next day, knowing that was what could keep me sane. The difficult part was explaining what had happened to my friends. She chose work, I kept saying, but couldn't dive into the details. I wasn't emotionally ready to tell that story just yet. Plus, I didn't know where my relationship stood at that point. They let me be for the moment, but I knew I would eventually have to face them and say something. It was inevitable. On the third evening, that was last week, I drove home to meet Madison at my apartment. She was waiting for me at the entrance, even though she had her key. Wordlessly, I opened the door and walked in. She walked in after me. Ignoring her, I went to the bar and poured myself a drink. "Are you going to keep ignoring me?" she asked. I said nothing, but sat on the couch and nodded that she sat too. We both just sat, saying nothing, but sipping our drinks. "I'm sorry," Madison said. "I know that somehow this is my fault." "Oh, not somehow, Madison," I replied calmly despite my raging anger. "You did this." We didn't speak to each other again for a while. Then she asked me if I was indeed going to propose. I smirked as I reached for the ring. "Yes, it's been in my pocket since yesterday when the chef had sent it over." I threw the shiny diamond at her. She gasped when she saw it. I was more into gold than diamond. Left to me, I would have picked a golden ring, but my girlfriend has a thing for diamonds, so I picked a diamond ring. I smiled as she turned the ring around. She slipped it on her finger and lifted it admiringly. My anger dissipated as I saw the genuine excitement in her eyes. Leaving my seat, I went to her. She dropped the hand when I walked over to her, but I lifted the hand and kissed it. I was going to be on bended knee to ask that she marry me. It didn't matter anymore that another proposal had been ruined. She was here with me right now. Who cares about decorations and glamour? We were the most important part of the relationship. As I got off the couch to kneel, her words stopped me. "I want us to try an open relationship." I stopped to look at her. Was this some joke? Did she mean that? "Look at us," she said, explaining the trash she had just mentioned. "We started dating right from high school. We were young and stupid, and we haven't dated anyone since then." "Your point?" I asked, still shocked Madison was saying this. "I think we shouldn't just get married until we are both certain we want to spend the rest of our lives with each other." I kept staring at her, too shocked to respond. "I mean, we should date other people, try out things we've never done and see where that goes." She went about how we couldn't be certain we loved each other when we barely gave anyone a chance. I was hurt and shocked and betrayed all at once. I don't know what she was saying, but I know not even my strong love for her would make me do this. When she was done spewing her nonsense, She got up and left. I said nothing to her about it. As a matter of fact, I stopped speaking to her. This was not the sweet Madison I knew. This was someone else speaking. I became angry and frustrated. I lost concentration even at work. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else was going on. It took some time, but I got a hold of myself and I called in my private investigator. Getting a private investigator involved. I showed him Madison's picture and told her to follow up on everything she did. There was no way she wanted an open relationship. Something was up. Instinctively, I gave the PI Logan's picture too. My girl had started to change drastically when she started working with him. Maybe, just maybe, he had a hand in this. I told myself she couldn't have been having an affair with her boss, or could she? After some days, my private investigator came back with some interesting pictures. I had been right. Something was up. It turns out my girlfriend of 9 years was having an affair with her boss. And to cover up her shameful act, she wanted an open relationship. I knew I should have crushed his company when I had the chance. I was a bit too late now if I wanted to. I could still end the man anyways, but the affair had already happened. Confronting Madison. I didn't think I needed to see Madison after what I discovered. We weren't talking anyway, and that seemed to do her more good than I thought. The picture the PI sent me some days later showed she was enjoying her time now with her boss. While stuck on figuring things out, she was already humping her boss and dangling the open relationship rope in front of me. I didn't bother calling her. I just drove to her place. She opened the door and let me in. When she greeted me happily, I waved her aside and told her to spare me the shenanigans. When did it start? I asked her with a look that told her I wasn't having any lies. It started back in school, she began, then lurched into a whole story of how she had been attracted to Logan. She explained how she fought her growing attraction for Logan because she loved me. I still love you, she said while I looked at her with disdain. I could tolerate anything. And I mean anything, but not cheating. No, I could never tolerate that. She swears nothing happened while in school other than a few kisses. And that is nothing, I barked. That I missed, that made me angrier. I started pacing the room. She said nothing while I went back and forth. Her face was a mirror of my pain. She cried as she tried to calm me down. She wouldn't come near me. That was good. Finally, I stopped pacing and sat down far away from her. Then I let her continue her story. Go on, I said. She then explained how they met again online and how she got the job. It was when she started working with him that the affair started. Unable to resist, I asked why she insisted on working for him when she knew she was attracted to him. Her excuse was as disgusting as the act itself. She claimed she wanted to know where the attraction would lead her. Well, now she knows where it led her with me. Let me get this straight. I paused, shaking my head. After sleeping with him, you tried to cover it up with an open relationship? She said nothing but looked downcast. It was a facade. I wasn't falling for that look ever again. We are done, I told her frankly. Continue your relationship with him, okay? I don't ever want to see you. I can never stand a cheat. Memories of the days my parents were torn apart flashed through my mind. I don't want to relive that. I cannot do this. There's no way I'm taking her back. She has since been sending people to me and asking that I forgive her. But heck no, that's not happening. The fact that she cheated and tried to cover it up by asking for an open relationship speaks volumes. She would be married. She would do more despicable things. I know it sucks that we've been together that long, yet this is how it ends for us. I am hurt and angry at the moment. The sight of her makes me puke. Will time ever heal this? I don't think so. OP, I'm sorry to say, but after the first time you brought up marriage and she wasn't so thrilled about it, I feel like that was your first red flag. I think the red flag was actually hitting you square in the face and you managed to ignore it somehow. She clearly wasn't ready, wasn't interested in marrying you, and didn't want to commit to just one person. Those are all fine, but she should have expressed what she was feeling in the time. After hearing this story, I can truly feel the pain of the person involved and understand the deep lessons it offers about love and trust. In any relationship, honesty is the strongest foundation upon which lasting happiness can be built. Once trust is broken, it takes more than just love to repair the damage. It requires understanding, effort, and accountability from both sides. Sometimes letting go isn't a sign of weakness, but a way to protect your self-worth and open the door to a better future. This story serves as a reminder that in love, the person who's been with you the longest may not always be the one who stays with you forever. What truly matters is finding someone who is willing to nurture the relationship and remain committed with sincerity. What about you? How would you react in such a situation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and feel free to share this story if it resonated with you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more compelling stories like this. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.